Hey, Gavin. Thanks for joining me today. Appreciate your time and very much looking forward to hearing what you've got to say about just what's been going on in your world and what you've been seeing with the clients and prospects that you've been working with.
Strange times, isn't it, Lee? Delightful to be here, by the way. Yeah, it's strange times indeed. As you know, my focus is high performance, and so my massive interest is mindset and what differentiates a peak performer from a performer who's maybe just good, if you like. And so my interest isn't just the business side of it; it's the what are people going through. And I think definitely a lot of people who have never lost confidence in their lives, who've always been motivated go-getters, know exactly what they want, believe that they can go and get it, all of a sudden feeling a little bit lost, a little bit unsure. I personally, I mean, obviously my business, public speaking, motivational speaking at events, has been tumbleweed, clearly, because nobody's running events. And I remember going out to my wife. I've been pretty sure what I wanted to do. My big thing was, can I help people, and how would I help people, and what would I do? And I was running interviews every day to try and help leaders to really get their heads straight and get a view of where they wanted to go. But I remember one day, probably about 3-4 weeks in, I really wasn't in the right mindset, and I was sitting out here in the office, and I was just thinking, this ain't working for me today. And I know everybody's had days like that, but it's again, I'm one of these people. I very rarely have days like that. And I walked out, and my wife saw it on my face straight away, and she said, "Goodness, what's up with you?" I went, "Don't know, just not feeling it today." And my wife said to me, she said, "Yeah, but you've always said that no matter what, you could turn it around." And she was trying to be motivational, right? You've always said you could turn it around, and you're a good salesperson, and if anybody can sell anything, you could sell something. And I kind of looked at her in that moment. I just said, yeah, I know I said that, but the assumption was kind of there that there would be a market and that my product was actually capable of being sold. And I wasn't really thinking of pandemics and everybody getting sent home and the kids being at home and one thing and another. And I mean, obviously, I turned that around and it was a momentary thing. But I think the point is that loads and loads of people are going through that kind of thing at the moment. And when you look at the 3 core building blocks of high performance, which are conviction, clarity, and consistency, I think that those 3 have been shot for, loads and loads of people in many, many different ways. So it's been difficult times.
Fascinating, yeah. And I think what's been interesting in mentioning those high performers, both the leaders and the individuals, within the organizations, they've kind of been turning to us, and what we've seen is, you've had these salespeople that weren't really salespeople because the phone was always ringing, and therefore they were just order taking, and now they were like, oh my goodness, I've got to get on the phone and make calls. But those people that have more that responsible mindset, which I know you're a big fan of, proactively reached out to us and said, right, okay, this has fundamentally changed the way we operate. Can you work with us to help us understand where we were doing well, why we were doing well, where we're not doing so well? So really using the data that they've got to figure out, okay, how can we pivot? How can we change? They didn't just sit back and wait for that phone to ring, or the age-old, why aren't marketing generating me more leads? Which is fascinating. So that's certainly a big shift. People reaching out to us saying we need to be not only proactive as a business doing lead gen outbound, but as individuals and as leaders and as managers and etc. I actually need to take responsibility now and really understand how we've got to where we are and the data that supports all of that, so that I can find new markets or basically ways of pivoting and changing and adapting what we're doing. So those are the ones that we're seeing are definitely giving themselves the opportunity to see themselves through this challenging time.
It's true.
Yeah, and I think the leaders dynamics, I know obviously you focus on those, and it'd be interesting to get your thoughts. You know, they've looked at tech as an offering, you know, or as a potential solution. How can we get better, more efficient using tech? Looking at the data quality, how can we leverage that to be better, to understand what we're doing? And then the third part is the people, you know, their employees. So the three core components to what we do is connecting strategy, people, and technology. So making sure all three are aligned and as efficient as possible. It's all right having that great strategy that you've now got to change, and you're implementing some new tech, and sometimes the people get left behind or forgotten when you've made those two fundamental changes. So it's important really to make sure they're felt, or they feel part of that change, because they've got you to where you are today, right? You know, they are the business. I know you've got products and services and everything you sell, but you know, your people are the things that make it happen. So it's important for them to feel a part of it. I would just wonder from your side, you know, the leaders, are they engaging their employees? Are the employees proactively engaging with the leaders? What sort of dynamics are you seeing there?
That's a good question. And clearly the spectrum is so broad. So on the one hand, you've got some teams and some leaders who are doing this amazingly well, and on the others, you've got some who just haven't. And I think it's probably worth digging down further into the conviction, clarity, and consistency to find an answer to this thing, because the first point, and if you think about it as almost like a, you know, it depends how you want to look at it. Sometimes I show them as blocks, and sometimes as like a core and then an outskirts and an outskirts, which actually makes a lot of sense. And I think at the core of everybody is this conviction, and conviction is about being a 10, being the best you can be, irrespective of what's going on. It's about having belief in yourself, having belief in your company, having belief in your organization, having belief in your people, in your clients, in your prospects, in your data, in the way you go about doing things. That's conviction, right? And I think, you know, we both know hundreds and thousands of leaders who had that complete conviction in what they were doing, but all of a sudden, boom, conviction's gone. As with me on that day, you know, holding your conviction in the face of everything changing. You can have belief in yourself, but even so, you can still have this lack of conviction around, well, you know, what's still working here? And I think that was a big shock moment for a lot of people, you know, quite senior people, you know, the sales leaders out there, because this isn't just people who've worked through it. There are really successful sales leaders who were just in the wrong businesses, in the wrong industries, and were furloughed. And then they're being brought back now, or they were brought back in the last month I've been to, and being told, get on with it again. But, you know, you've got to face that that's going to have a big impact on conviction and belief and mindset. So building that conviction back up again is critical. And that links, and this is perhaps the really important piece in relation to what we're talking about specifically, is that links to clarity. And clarity, put in its simplest, is knowing what to do, when to do it, and what not to do and when not to do it. And I think, again, most people know what to do. You know, you walk into an organization and you say to a sales director, look, it's all falling down. And it's one of the big problems, isn't it? As a consultant, you go in and they ask for advice and you listen and talk, and then you give the advice and they go, yeah, we've done that. Well, yeah, of course you can, because of course you have, because there's only one or two core things. You know, the fact remains that, you know, you go back 20 years, arguably now, but you go back 20 years and you walk into an organization, and the biggest problem in most sales organizations was what? People didn't pick the phone up enough. And you look at the figures and you look at the stats and you go, you don't pick the phone up enough. And you know, they go, well, we know that, and we've worked on that. Yeah, you have, but there isn't another answer. Look at your figures. That is the only answer at this moment in time. And you know, the same is true. There are very simple answers to things, and that clarity has always been there for people. But all of a sudden, it's like, well, what do you do? Do you pivot and sell like crazy? Do you pressurize your people to get out there and smash it right now? Do you produce new products and new ideas? Do you do what some of my peer group have done and go, well, okay, look, I run an MD group, I'm going to let you all come for free for a while, and then we'll think about payment in the future? Do you, as some of my friends have who run their own businesses, do you completely segue to another business? I mean, I've got some friends who've literally parked their businesses and are doing something entirely different. You know, I've got one friend who was working in an industry, and she's now doing home brewing stuff, because like that's really big at the moment. Who knew? So I mean, actually logical when you think about it, but who knew? You know, so what is the right path? What is the right clarity? You know, what do you need to stop doing right now, other than worrying, obviously? And without that clarity, without that blueprint, if you like, without that model, it's very difficult to hold conviction. Because if you know you're not doing anything valid, or you know you're not doing the right stuff, then by definition inside you start to lose conviction, because you can't, unless you're a psychopath, you can't have conviction when you know you're not doing the right stuff, because that's just mental, you know, psychotic or something. So that's really important. And I think historically, you'd have gone out to consultants, or you'd have gone out to an expert, or you'd have reached out to your mentor, or you'd have read a book, or you'd have gone, well, what is so-and-so doing? And you would get answers. But the reality is, who do you look at right now? Who's been through this before? Answer: no one. So again,
yeah, it's you know, like I say, coaches, mentors, thought leadership. It was, you know, it's a time of which none of us in our lifetime have ever experienced. And I guess the more senior of our generation experienced something as traumatic as the Spanish flu and the world wars, but they aren't in the sales environment anymore. So that ability to say, let's keep calm, you know,
carry on.
well, the keeping calm bit, you know, obviously everyone was panicking, and rightly so, because it's new. And it's not just new for a few, it's new for everybody. And I think that's what you said, it just threw everybody completely off. But getting that clarity that you were speaking about there, to give you that conviction and the confidence, you know, as a leader, that's really where you define yourself as being a leader, right? Rather than just a manager of people, bringing all that knowledge and experience from everything you've gone through in the past, and saying, do you know what, guys, give me some ideas, you know, being open to anything and everything, and then assimilating that data. I think any leader in this particular time that's closed themselves off to outside ideas and suggestions is probably gonna fail. And you know, the employees start to engage with their leaders then, if they feel part of that recovery plan. And then of course there's the communication side, so another C for you there, the communication with the employees as to what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've got that as a leader, I've got that sitting in clarity. So again, you've got people who have had a really clear idea of how to manage and run their staff, and all of a sudden they're at home or they're furloughed. Again, no roadmap, no blueprint, no instructions. And you know, that's probably one of the easy ones to work out what would be best practice, but nonetheless, it's still a new path for people. Which brings us on to the third C. And the third C is consistency. And I always say consistency, probably more than anything, is what separates people in the, you know, in the I'm 10 model from being the 10 to being the 11. You know, these speakers go to 11, because the consistency is what makes the difference. And we both know that. You know, you go into an organization and you talk about the things that they need to do. And let's say they're a sales organization and they say, well, we need to run regular coaching, or we need to run a meeting every Monday, or we need to do daily this, or we need to do that, or we need to do whatever. And then it turns up for a bit, but then it disappears again, or it turns up until they've got some sales and then it disappears again. And then of course you get the old roller coaster thing going on. And that consistency is what separates high performers, in my opinion. Yes, conviction, absolutely, clarity, but consistency. And in fact, I think the way to look at it is the opposite way around, and that is that chronic inconsistency is the enemy of high performance. And we all know someone, a leader or a business owner, or indeed a salesperson, who is great some of the time. You know, it's the person, you know, and I know, you know, and you notice this right the way back to your child. And I was a runner when I was at school, and I won't name him because he's still around, but there was a guy who was one of the sprinters. And I think the truth of the matter is, as a 100-meter sprinter, back in at 15, 16, you probably didn't have to do quite as much training if you were just basically talented. I was a 400 runner and you needed that stamina, you know, but he didn't so much. And he used to win most races, but he didn't win them all. And as we got older, he got further and further behind. And the bottom line was because he was chronically inconsistent, he needed to turn up and train every day, and he just never did. The same as salespeople need to turn up and sell every day, and leaders need to turn up and lead every day, and content marketers need to do content marketing every day. You know, it's just this consistency that's critically important. And I think put in this place where you don't have belief, you don't know what you're doing, well, consistency was never even on the agenda. And then you top that out that most of our performance, most of our behaviors, whilst yes, they do come from internally. And my whole shtick is, well, you need to get it going internally, and you need to drive it, and you need to be a 10, and you know, how can you be a 10 today, and all that sort of stuff. But the reality is that the environment plays a huge part in it. So, you know, most of our environments are set up to support us. So you're a leader in an organization, the environment is set up to support you. You're a sales manager, your leaders and your sales staff and your offices and your premises and the way you do things and the way you report and the way you measure stuff, and even just silly little things like getting dressed, going to work, getting on the train, walking through the doors, having a conversation. All of that environmental stuff supports what you had. Gone. And all of a sudden, you're sitting at home going, I mean, even, you know, take my scenario. I've worked at home for 20 years on and off. I wanted to work from home out of choice. I've got a large office that I've set up to support me. It was set up years ago. Everything I need is here. And yet, just the distraction of having the kids at home all of the time, just of this distraction of knowing that my wife is out there trying to educate 3 small children, just the distraction that every now and then you hear a fight, or even though it's through like 3 walls, a fight or a bit of screaming or whatever, and it puts you off. And then I think to people who haven't got that set up, people who maybe haven't even got an office at home, or 20 somethings who are 3-4 people to a house, with one lounge between them, who are perched on their bed doing a webinar, and the environment is just not supporting them, which again kills consistency. So when you look at these 3 things, it's really easy to see where the challenges have come from, and you've got to work out how can you deal with that and get back excuse me, in each of those areas.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if people were honest with themselves, and that taking that responsible mindset again, thinking to those people that said they were working from home pre-COVID with their 13-inch laptop that was balanced on their knee for maybe total of an hour a day. Now all of a sudden, you know, they've got requests into IT because, oh, I need to have monitors, I need to have screens, I need to have a desk, I need to have this, I need to have that in order to do my job from home. Well, if you're honest with yourself, were you really doing your job from home previously? Because if you were, then you probably would have asked for this equipment pre-COVID, you know, because if you wanted to be that 10 and be optimum, that's the kit you need. Or it's not, you know, you're requesting it now and it's not what you need. But like you say, having that consistency is really key. And what we found was that through that switch from 100% office to 100% home, you know, remote, required a significant shift in change in process. And therefore, if you're changing that process and the tools and everything that people are doing and the way they work, it's imperative you get consistency as quickly as possible. Otherwise, people are going off on all sorts of different tangents, and you'll never know, you know, what's the right way, and your reports all break, and you know, your KPI metrics are shot, and you just don't know because people aren't following the same consistent processes. So, you know, I think it's vital to get that stability back again. Is look at the changes you've made. Is everybody following the same process? Is everybody using the same tools? Is everybody's reports all accurate, or is there gaps in the data? That's okay, and oddly enough, we sometimes say gaps in the data or no data is still data because it tells you need to change something. So perhaps give people a bit of leeway. You know, they've had to change massively and adapt, so they haven't input something correct into the CRM. Okay, let's look at it, let's review it, let's, you know, reach out to them and say, you know, we've noticed this, you know, here's the training manual. Do we need to do a session again with you? Or are you finding that this isn't working for you? Is there a better way of doing it? So try and engage with them to understand this new way of working, and is it enabling them to be consistent? Because it may not. You may not. The processes that you thought of as a leader and thought, yeah, this is how we're going to do it. It might just not work at the cold face. So
it's everything, isn't it? You've got to think about everything, environmentally and support wise. It's all got to be looked back again. You can't just expect people to achieve it. I mean, it's a sidestep slightly, but look at the state of you and me. I mean, look at the heat of us right now. Could you realistically expect any of you? I mean, it is so, I thought this office was perfect, but I don't have aircon. And it is so hot in here right now, and you look seriously hot as well. And realistically speaking, can you expect anybody else, or can you expect your team to sit there literally dripping at their chairs, melting into puddles? And I know it's a silly thing, but these are actually big things that are going to distract people and put people off. And so, you need all of the process, but you also need to have this heads down, top down view, thinking about, well, how do we really support this, and how do we really support people, and how do we really measure stuff, and how do we whatever. And I think I genuinely believe, I mean, one of the best interviews that I did was with a chap called Bob Bradley, and Bob Bradley works with MDs. And we were talking about office premises, and Bob said, and this is interesting because he said, and it's one of those step back questions that are just really, really great. And he said, I think the question that most leaders and business owners need to be asking right now is, what is the purpose of premises? What is the purposes of offices or premises? So rather than going, how do we use this space, or how do we shift this space, or what do we do, or how do we get people back to work? What is the purpose of premises? So the much bigger question, and I think we need to be doing similar with teams around high performance. Yes, there's various things we can do to try and encourage them to do the job that they were doing in the way that they were doing, but maybe the stepped up question is the more important one, the bigger question to work out, well, actually, should we be changing the whole way we work? Should we be changing? Because this stuff ain't going away, is it, for a lot of us? I mean,
No, I agree. And I think this might just be the first, hopefully not of many, but I would hope that we will have all learned something from this now, and most likely stockpiled on masks and gloves and hand wash and all that kind of stuff. But I think, I was actually chatting to my wife and some friends over the weekend about it, and is this going to lead to a slowdown in the growth of our metropolises, the cities, the concrete jungles of London and Manchester and everything? Because all of a sudden now, office space could go down to a third of what it was previously, and now all of a sudden you've got all these half empty buildings, which I hope will get repurposed. But in my mind, I think it will slow down that outward growth for the foreseeable, until something significantly changes to allow us to be a lot safer in transport and travel. So that's going to have a huge impact on that sort of industry. But changing the way we work, I think, has now changed. And I think all those businesses that said, no, I'm not letting my staff work from home because it can't work, have, I hope, been proved wrong. And that their businesses have still survived. Some of them, thankfully. So it's been a real challenge. I think from someone that has worked from home for probably the last 5 to 10 years, one of the biggest things I would like to share with people watching this is be careful of burnout, because it's really easy. You wake up in the morning, you're probably on your smartphone checking your email, seeing what's urgent, and then you're having your cup of coffee, breakfast, whatever, and you're sat at your desk and you think, right, I'll get going, and all of a sudden it's now 1 o'clock and you've kind of unplugged from the matrix, and geez, I swear I just sat down a minute ago. You go and grab some lunch, probably eat it at your desk, or maybe enjoy it on the balcony or garden if you're fortunate enough to have that, and then poof, back into the matrix, and all of a sudden it's 6, 7 o'clock at night, and you're unplugging again, and you're bathing the kids, and then you're boom, dinner, bed, and then the hamster wheel starts again, and it's really easy to fall into a trap of being just plugged into this screen. Whereas in the office environment, there's all those distractions, and some of them are good because they enable you to sort of step away from what you're doing, come back to it with fresh eyes. So you know, we have things like Apple Watches or whatever it may be, set a timer on your phone every hour, get up, stand up, walk around the room you're in, even open the windows, get some fresh air, just sort of break that cycle every hour if you can, because you really can lead to burnout very, very quickly. And obviously it's been for a sustained period already. So from a mental health perspective, and stay strong and to be that 10, it does require taking a step back, taking a breather, doing some breathing even, but definitely disconnect from that digital world every hour, even if it's just 5 minutes. Get that gap in your day.
Yeah, I mean, I as someone who's been working at home, for 20 years on and off, I don't, obviously fortunate enough to have an external office, an external office that is a separate building, but that actually is connected to the building, so I don't even have to go outside, but it is outside. So, fortunate, large, etc. But I don't take anything business oriented back into the house. Never. So when I leave here, that's it. I'll take a book. If I'm reading a book, I will read books, sitting, as you say, on the balcony, looking down the valley. I will take my phone, but actually I will often leave my phone in the office overnight. And if I do bring it, I turn off, I shut down, I've turned off notifications and email anyway, but I have those off and I do not touch it. And if I start getting into a habit where I'm picking it up and looking, I then leave it in my office for a week to break the pattern. So I very much do, because you're right. I think otherwise it spills over. And I recognise the time thing. One of the things I've been quite amazed by over the last 5 months is how much those regular trips away to go and do a conference broke my pattern. So I've been doing exactly as you say, walking in here, only coming out for lunch, turning back up again at kind of kids' bedtime sort of thing, going, where's the day gone? And you're looking at the day and you've not done anything unproductive. It's all been productive, but actually, the level of focus just ridiculous, really. And funnily enough, you mentioned the setting the alarm. I do that, not on an hour, but every 90 minutes. And I get up and I'll go outside, get some fresh air, do some press ups, say hello to the kids, get a coffee, take 10 minutes out or so before I come back again.
Yeah,
I've started doing that.
An interesting one that really someone shared with me recently that categorically makes you make that definition and the break is if you're going into that work environment, whether that be at the kitchen table, on a balcony, in the garden, in the office, wherever it may be, get changed into something for work. Even it could be casual clothes that you've got that you've designated as work casual clothes, and then when you leave that office you get changed into your casual clothes, your everyday clothes, because then if you've got that mentality of if I'm going back to work, I've got to get changed, so is it really worth it? Can it wait? Can it wait till tomorrow? Can it wait till after my lunch? Whatever it may be, can that phone call wait? Can that email wait?
My wife some nights will see that I'm racing and I want to go back in and work on something, and she will say to me, look, you can go back in if you want and you can go back and work, and I always say no, and I never come back in again, because I don't want to fall into that trap of, it's bad enough really that you're not in work and you're not switched off. Don't scratch the itch, because then it's going to be even worse. Now, clearly, if you're setting up a business and you have to, or you've got a project or something, it's different. Clearly, if you're not working enough hours in the first place, then, it's a different matter. And everybody's got to do what is right for them, but everybody needs to get out and switch off at some point. And that lack of separation, I think you're right. I think it is a mental health problem for a lot of people that's coming, if not already arrived for many.
Fantastic. Gavin, as always, fantastic chatting with you. I always find your insights fascinating. I've done for the last 16 years. So thanks for everything you do to encourage and motivate people to be their best. I'll keep an eye out on everything you're doing there. So best of luck to yourself and the family, and look forward to catching up with you again very soon.
And you. Nice speaking to you, Lee.
Cheers.